Hey guys, today we are going on a journey, not through the bustling streets of a modern city, but back, far back, to the primal whispers of human beginnings. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a swirling banner, vibrant and proud, snapping in the wind above a fortress. Or perhaps, closer to home, that little sticker on your laptop proclaiming allegiance to a band, a cause, a quirky internet meme. You see them everywhere, from the solemn unfurling at an Olympic ceremony to the faded banner on a distant fishing trawler, silently declaring its port. These aren't just pretty designs, are they? Oh no. They are ancient echoes, deeply ingrained in our very DNA, speaking a language far older than words. We're talking about the secret language of symbols, the silent shouts of identity that have bound us, divided us, and guided us since we first scrawled on cave walls. You might think you understand what a flag means, what it truly represents, but trust me, by the end of this, your concept of a simple piece of cloth might just unravel completely. In fact, if you're still awake by then, you've probably defied the odds, proving yourself a true history sleuth insomniac. Imagine, if you will, you're not scrolling through endless feeds, but instead you are hunkered down, 200,000 years ago beside a flickering fire. The damp earth beneath you is cold, and the chill wind carries the scent of pine and something else, something wild. Your tribe, small and tight-knit, huddles together. Survival is the only game in town, and every rustle in the dark could be dinner, or it could be you becoming dinner. In this brutal, beautiful world, where would you even begin to tell who's on your team and who's, well, just another hungry wanderer looking for your berries? You don't have uniforms, obviously. No embroidered crests on your animal hide tunics, no matching sweatbands. But you do have something. Maybe it's the way you've painted your face with ochre, a specific swirl of red and yellow known only to your kin. Or perhaps it's the precise arrangement of eagle feathers woven into your hair, each feather a silent testament to a hunt, a triumph, a shared history. You see, long before the first silken banner billowed over a medieval castle, identity was written on the body, etched into tools, whispered in the very air you breathed. These weren't just decorative flourishes, they were life-or-death pronouncements. I belong, I am safe here, you are not. Think of the very first brands, not a swoosh or a bitten apple, but a distinct pattern of notches carved into a bone needle, unique to your grandmother's tribe. Or the way your hunting party always carried a specific bundle of dried grasses, perhaps tied with a strand of your hair, a silent pledge of unity. This wasn't about showcasing individual flair, though a little primitive swagger certainly never hurt anyone. It was about immediate recognition, in a world where a wrong guess could mean a very short, very painful history lesson. One mainstream historical fact we can chew on. Evidence suggests that ochre, a natural earth pigment, was used by early humans as far back as 300,000 years ago, not just for practical purposes like hide tanning, but extensively for body paint and cave art. This suggests a deep, innate human need to adorn, to declare, to differentiate. You weren't just a person. You were a painted person, a member of this group. It's like, imagine if your entire social media profile was literally etched onto your forehead for everyone to see. Talk about commitment. Then there's the quirky tidbit. Some anthropologists propose that the earliest standards weren't even held by humans, but rather by spirits. Imagine a shaman, deep in a trance, communing with the ancestral bison, and then upon awakening, crafting a staff topped with bison horns, not just as a symbol of the animal, but as a direct channel to its power, a marker of the tribe's spiritual patron. These totems weren't merely objects. They were living embodiments of group identity and protection. You probably wouldn't try to steal that bison staff. I mean, would you want to explain that to an angry shaman? Didn't think so. Now for the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether the elaborate cave paintings, like those in Lascaux or Chauvet, were purely artistic expressions, spiritual rituals, or if they served a more territorial purpose. A kind of ancient, this is our spot, hands off the mammoths sign. Were they early billboards or sacred sanctuaries? The truth, as always, is probably a complex blend. But the very act of leaving a permanent mark, a visual declaration, hints at a fundamental desire to signify presence and belonging. These early markers weren't always permanent. Sometimes, a shared scent, perhaps from a specific herb rubbed on the skin, or the smoke from a particular type of wood used in their fires, could be an identifier. You'd literally smell your way to your people. Forget designer perfumes, these were survival scents. Imagine showing up to a tribal gathering smelling like a rival clan because you used the wrong firewood. Awkward, very awkward. The evolution from personal adornment to group totems, and eventually to portable standards, was a slow, organic crawl. A successful hunt might be celebrated by adorning a prominent branch with the hide of the slain beast, planting it firmly in the ground. A temporary, yet powerful, declaration of victory and communal achievement. It's the ancient equivalent of hoisting your sports team's flag after a big win, only with a lot more grunting and significantly less air conditioning. As groups grew larger, and interactions with other groups became more frequent, sometimes friendly, often not, the need for clear, unambiguous identification grew paramount. You couldn't rely on everyone remembering everyone else's unique body paint. You needed a shared, visible symbol that could be seen from a distance, something that rallied your own and warned outsiders. This is where the idea of a standard truly begins to take root, an object often elevated that represented the collective. Perhaps a dried animal head mounted on a stick carried by the strongest hunter, or a bundle of specific sacred grasses bound tightly and paraded before battle. These were the silent harbingers, the very first whispers of ancient cloth, long before any loom wove silk or linen. They were crude, practical, imbued with deep meaning, and absolutely vital for navigating the treacherous landscape of early human society. They told a story without words, a story of us against them, a story of belonging, and ultimately, a story of survival. You might not realize it, but every time you identify with a group, a brand, a team, you're tapping into a million-year-old impulse, a primal call to declare who you are and where you stand. And that, my friend, is just the very, very beginning. Banners of battlefields. You stand on a dusty, sun-baked plain, the air thick with the metallic tang of fear and anticipation. Around you, thousands of bodies, a swirling ocean of bronze and linen, are bracing for impact. The ground trembles underfoot, not from an earthquake, but from the synchronized, earth-shaking tramp of an advancing enemy. The air is alive with the guttural shouts of commanders, the rhythmic pounding of war drums, and the distant, chilling shriek of 1,000 impending deaths. You clutch your spear, knuckles white, eyes scanning for any familiar face in the churning chaos. This isn't your comfortable armchair, is it? No, this is ancient warfare, and let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive the first 5 minutes without a very helpful history podcast, narrator whispering survival tips in your ear. But amidst this overwhelming sensory assault, you notice something. High above the fray, piercing the haze of dust and the glint of sun on steel, a distinct shape bobs and sways. It's not just a random piece of cloth. It's your piece of cloth, your symbol, and suddenly, A sliver of sanity pierces the panic. Remember those whispers of ancient cloth we talked about? How early humans used simple markers for identity, for a sense of belonging. Well, take those whispers and amplify them into a roar, a declaration, a beacon in the storm. Because as humanity organized into larger tribes, then into armies, the need for a tangible point of reference on the battlefield became not just useful, but absolutely critical. Imagine a scrum of thousands, friend and foe indistinguishable in the dust and clangor. How do you know where your comrades are? How do you rally if you're scattered? How do you even tell which direction your general wants you to charge, or, more importantly, retreat? This, my sleepy friend, is where the earliest battle standards unfurled their mighty, if sometimes surprisingly modest, presence. Before the grand fabric flags we recognize today, these standards were often simpler affairs. Think of an animal effigy. A wolf, a bull, a fearsome eagle, perched atop a tall pole, perhaps adorned with feathers or painted symbols. The Egyptians, for example, carried standards depicting their gods or sacred animals, like the falcon-headed Horus or the ibis-headed Thoth, into battle. These weren't just pretty decorations. They were living embodiments of the divine protection and collective identity of the soldiers fighting beneath them. If you lost sight of that sacred ibis, you were not just geographically lost. You were spiritually adrift, cut off from your very essence. It's like losing your phone in a mosh pit, only instead of just missing your TikTok feed, you might also lose your head. The genius of these early standards lay in their immediate visual impact. In an age before radios, before megaphones, before smoke signals were sophisticated enough to convey, flank left, but don't forget your packed lunch. A tall pole with a recognizable symbol was your best friend. It was the ancient world's GPS, only instead of a soothing voice telling you to turn right, you got the reassuring, albeit sometimes terrifying, sight of your tribal totem. They served as primary rallying points. If your formation broke, if you were pushed back, your eyes would instinctively seek that familiar banner. That was where you regrouped, where you reformed your lines, where you looked for orders. It was the visible anchor in a sea of chaos, a silent promise of solidarity. Consider the Roman legions, arguably some of the most organized fighting forces of the ancient world. Their aquila, or eagle standard, was more than just a symbol. It was the very soul of the legion. For a Roman legionary, losing the aquila was the ultimate disgrace, a catastrophe worse than almost any defeat. Entire campaigns were launched, not just to conquer territory, but to recover a lost eagle. This wasn't just about pride, it was deeply pragmatic. The aquila was the focal point around which a legion formed, marched, and fought. Its presence signified the legion's identity, its strength, its very existence. Without it, the legion was essentially disbanded, a collection of individuals rather than a unified fighting machine. It was like trying to run a marathon when you can't find your running shoes, your water bottle, or the starting line. Total disarray. But flags weren't just about rallying. They were also primitive, yet effective communication tools. Think about it. A general, perched on a hill surveying the battlefield, couldn't shout commands to every single soldier. But he could signal to the standard bearers. A standard raised high, lowered, or moved in a certain direction could convey orders. Advance! Hold your ground! Flank the enemy! Different colors, different symbols, and different movements could be combined to form a rudimentary code. The Byzantine Empire, for instance, used various flags and standards, often vibrantly colored and adorned with imperial symbols like the double-headed eagle. Not just for identification, but for relaying complex commands across large formations. Imagine trying to explain complex tactical maneuvers with just a flag. It's a bit like trying to order a triple-shot, oat milk, sugar-free vanilla latte with a single-hand gesture. Possible, but prone to misinterpretation. Now for a truly quirky tidbit. Some ancient Mesopotamian standards were not just symbols, but were believed to house the very spirit of a god or ancestor. The Assyrians, for example, carried standards that were essentially portable shrines, complete with miniature altars. Before battle, rituals would be performed before these standards to invoke divine assistance, turning the flag into a powerful magical artifact, not just a practical one. You weren't just fighting under a banner. You were fighting under the direct gaze and hopefully blessing of a deity. It certainly ups the stakes if you drop it, doesn't it? However, the precise lexicon of these ancient battlefield signals remains a fascinating subject of debate. Historians still argue whether the complexity of these standard-based communication systems allowed for truly nuanced tactical commands, or if they were primarily limited to basic movements and rallying points. How much could a Roman general truly convey with a mere dip of a vexillum, a flag-like standard attached horizontally to a crossbar? Was it a simple turn left, or could it imply turn left and then prepare for cavalry charge, but only if the moon is full and you've had your breakfast? The granular details are often lost to time, forcing scholars to piece together clues from ancient texts, archaeological finds, and of course, a healthy dose of informed speculation. As armies grew larger and battles became more complex, the need for clear, unmistakable identification and communication only intensified. The simple effigy on a pole began its slow, deliberate evolution into the more elaborate cloth flags we recognize today. The materials became more durable, the designs more intricate, and the importance of these visual anchors only solidified. From the bronze eagles of Rome to the painted wooden standards of early Germanic tribes, from the silk banners of Chinese dynasties to the animal skin totems of African warriors, the story is consistent. In the chaotic crucible of ancient conflict, the flag was not merely a piece of fabric. It was hope. It was home. It was the silent voice of command, a beacon in the storm, and quite often, the last thing you saw before you either won the day or, well, let's just say you joined the illustrious ranks of those who probably didn't survive the first 5 minutes. It's a good thing you're just listening from a safe distance, isn't it? You trace the rough weave of a tapestry, your fingers brushing over threads spun centuries ago, depicting a scene of knights and their fluttering standards. The air in this imaginary, ancient hall is thick with the scent of old wood smoke and the faint metallic tang of armor, a stark contrast to the antiseptic gleam of your modern life. You can almost hear the faint clink of mail, the distant trumpeting of a horn. Imagine standing there, amidst the pageantry, watching a cavalcade of mounted warriors ride past. Each horseman, a vibrant splash of color against the dull gray of a medieval sky, carries a small, stiff banner. Not the vast national flags, you know, but something far more personal, more immediate. This is where the story truly begins to unfurl from the whispers of ancient cloth we discussed, to something more defined, more. You see, for millennia, those early symbolic markers, those sticks with feathers or carved animal totems we talked about, they served their purpose. They said, we are this tribe, or we follow that spirit. But as societies grew more complex, as land became something to be owned and fought over, and as individuals within those societies began to accrue power and influence, a new kind of symbol was needed. one that spoke not just of collective identity, but of personal authority, of lineage, of ownership. Picture the dusty, chaotic melee of a medieval battle, a place where distinguishing friend from foe was less about subtle facial recognition, and more about whether the person swinging an axe at your head was wearing the right colors. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in such an environment. It's not like they had handy identify friend or foe apps back then. So what did they have? They had heraldry. Originally, this wasn't about flags at all, but about decorating shields. Imagine a knight, encased in armor, indistinguishable from his comrades until he raised his shield, emblazoned with a unique design, a roaring lion, a soaring eagle, 3 fleur-de-lis. This wasn't just pretty art, it was his visual ID. It said, "This is Sir Reginald, and he's probably about to hit you with something heavy." These designs, or armorial bearings, quickly became hereditary, passed down through families, evolving into increasingly complex systems. A son would inherit his father's shield design, perhaps adding a small, distinctive difference to show he was the heir, but still tied to the family legacy. It was like the world's first visual family tree, but one you could wear into battle. A mainstream historical fact, often overlooked, is that the earliest forms of heraldry weren't even standardized. They were highly individual, and often changed with a knight's whims or deeds. It wasn't until the 12th and 13th centuries that heralds specialized officials whose job it was to record and regulate these symbols emerged, bringing order to the chaos of 1,000 different lions. Now here's a quirky little tidbit for you. Some early heraldic devices were actually quite literal. There's a tale, perhaps apocryphal, of a knight so renowned for his skill with a certain weapon that his shield simply depicted a giant, gleaming version of it. Or another who, having survived a particularly nasty encounter with a wild boar, adopted the beast's head as his emblem. It was less about artistic flair and more about, "I fought a pig and won, so now I am Pig Man." You can almost hear the medieval equivalent of a marketing team trying to spin that. These personal emblems were not static. They told a story, sometimes a very blunt one, of deeds and daring. So, how did these shield designs jump from being stuck to a knight's arm to fluttering proudly on a pole? Well, as battlefields grew larger and more complex, and as commanders needed to direct vast numbers of troops, simply looking for Sir Reginald's shield in the scrum became impractical. You needed something visible from a distance, something that could be seen above the fray, a rallying point that everyone, from the lowliest foot soldier to the most seasoned knight, could instantly recognize. That's where the personal banner or pennon came in. A pennon was essentially a miniature version of the knight's shield, rendered in fabric, often pointed or swallow-tailed. It was smaller than the standard you might picture today, usually just big enough to be carried by a single horseman or a squire. It was still very much about the individual, a mobile advertisement for their presence and their family's honor. When a knight was made a banneret, a significant honor, he was granted the right to have his pennon cut square, transforming it into a small banner, a step closer to the more familiar rectangular flag. This signified his ability to command a substantial body of troops under his own leadership. Historians still argue whether the transition from pointed pennon to square banner was purely a symbolic gesture of command, or if it also had a practical battlefield application, making the device easier to see and interpret from a distance. As these personal emblems migrated from shield to cloth, they began to represent not just the individual knight, but the lands he held, the castle he commanded, and the people who lived under his protection. A feudal lord's banner flying from his keep was a constant, visible declaration of his authority over that territory. It said, "This land belongs to the house of insert noble surname here, and if you have any complaints, please direct them to our heavily armed guards." It wasn't just a sign of personal pride. It was a territorial claim, a visual boundary marker in an age before Google Maps. This evolution from individual warrior identity to broader territorial representation was gradual, but profound. The lion on a knight's shield became the lion on the banner flying over his castle. And then, eventually, the lion on the standard carried by his entire army. The family crest morphed into a territorial emblem, a symbol of loyalty and belonging for everyone associated with that noble house and the lands it controlled. It's a neat trick, really, how a bit of painted wood and then some sewn fabric could encapsulate centuries of lineage, acres of land, and the fates of thousands. It's a testament to the power of a simple image, isn't it? Just like remembering that crocodile dung sunscreen, these symbols became ingrained in the collective memory, guiding allegiances and defining territories long before nations, as we know them, even existed. You've seen how those vibrant cloth banners, once confined to the muddy fields of battle or the grand halls of nobility, screaming, "This land is mine," or "My great-great-grandpappy slew a dragon." Okay, maybe not a dragon, but a particularly nasty badger slowly unfurled their meaning, becoming markers of identity. But now picture a different canvas, one far vaster and infinitely more unforgiving than any lord's muddy estate. The open ocean. You stand on the deck of a wooden ship, the salt spray whipping your face, the timbers groaning like a grumpy old man trying to get out of bed, and the horizon stretches endlessly, blurring the line between sky and water. Here in this watery wilderness, the need for a universally understood language, a silent shout across the waves, became not just useful but absolutely vital. Think about it. Out here, there are no road signs, no conveniently placed stone markers, no friendly villagers to ask for directions, unless you count the occasional school of dolphins who, frankly, aren't much help with navigation. And you probably won't survive this journey without some way to tell a passing vessel, "Hey, we're friendly," or "We've got the plague, steer clear." The very earliest attempts at maritime communication were, as you can imagine, rather crude. Perhaps a bonfire on deck at night, a plume of smoke by day, or the frantic waving of a colored tunic, which, if you were a particularly stylish sailor, might just be your everyday outfit, leading to some hilarious misunderstandings. Are they in distress or just really enthusiastic about Laundry Day? You might wonder. As trade routes expanded and navies grew, these ad hoc signals simply weren't cutting it. Imagine trying to explain in a chaotic storm, through the roar of the wind and waves, that your rudder is busted and you need assistance, all while waving a red rag you happen to find in the hold. You'd probably end up being mistaken for a particularly aggressive matador trying to challenge a whale. The diverse languages of the world's burgeoning maritime powers further complicated matters. An English ship couldn't just shout across to a Spanish galleon and expect to be understood, especially not with a gale blowing. And unlike land-based heraldry, where you could get up close and admire the intricate stitching of a family crest, out here, distance meant clarity was paramount. You needed something bold, simple, and unambiguous, visible from miles away, snapping against the relentless sky. This pressing need for clarity led to the birth of sophisticated signal flags. Initially, these were often national ensigns, flown to declare a ship's allegiance. You'd hoist your nation's flag, a square or rectangular piece of cloth, usually at the stern, proudly declaring, "This ship is from insert your home country here, and we're probably carrying spices or cannons or both." But what if you wanted to say more than just where you were from? What if you wanted to communicate a complex message, like "We've spotted pirates to starboard"? Or, "Could you lend us a cup of sugar? We ran out." This is where individual signal flags, each representing a letter, a number, or a specific phrase, began to emerge. The development of the International Code of Signals, a global language of flags, is a mainstream historical fact that revolutionized maritime communication. Prior to this standardized system, different navies and merchant fleets had their own, often secret, code books. It was like everyone had their own private WhatsApp group, and no one could talk to anyone else. Imagine the chaos. A British ship might fly a yellow flag to signify quarantine, while a French ship might use the same yellow flag to mean dinner is served. Historians still argue whether the idea for a universal maritime code truly originated from the British Royal Navy's early signal books, or from the practical needs of the burgeoning merchant marine. Regardless, the necessity of it was undeniable. By the 19th century, a more unified system began to take shape. Each flag was distinct in its design, bold geometric shapes, contrasting colors, making them discernible even in poor weather or at great distances. You'd see a flag, perhaps a white square with a blue cross, meaning I am altering my course to starboard, or a red burgee with a white circle, indicating man overboard. Suddenly, ships weren't just floating national billboards. They were giant, silent message boards. A quirky tidbit. During the Age of Sail, there were instances where ships, wanting to avoid a lengthy quarantine, would fly specific signals indicating a clean bill of health, even if their crew was, shall we say, a little under the weather. One famous incident involved a ship flying the Q flag for quarantine, meaning my vessel is healthy and I request free pratique. But then covertly flying another flag that, to an astute observer, indicated, we have smallpox but don't tell anyone. Talk about sneaky. It's almost as audacious as pretending you didn't see that speed camera. The sheer ingenuity of these systems is captivating. You could spell out entire words, or, more efficiently, use combinations of flags to represent common phrases and emergencies. A series of fluttering pennants and squares, hoisted one after another up the rigging, could convey everything from a declaration of war to a request for a doctor. It was like a giant, wind-powered emoji system, centuries before your smartphone. You'd see these vibrant rectangles and triangles, snapping taut in the sea breeze, their colors a stark contrast against the endless blue, conveying silent narratives across the waves. The mastery of these codes was as crucial as knowing how to tie a knot or navigate by the stars. A ship's fate, and sometimes the fate of nations, could hinge on the correct interpretation of a few pieces of colored cloth dancing in the wind. The ocean, once a terrifying, silent void, now had a voice, whispered on the wind by silken signals. You feel it, don't you? That subtle shift in the air, a sense of something vast and new unfolding. No longer are we merely tracking the fleeting banners of a single night, or the practical signals of a ship navigating choppy waters, or even the ancient, whispered cloth worn by a specific tribe. Now the wind catches something grander, something that stretches across vast swathes of land, something that will soon inspire millions to cheer, to fight, to die. You're standing at the very threshold of nations as they begin to unfurl their new identities, not just on a pole, but in the collective consciousness of their people. It's a peculiar transition, really. For centuries, The most prominent flags you'd encounter were either the personal standards of a duke, emblazoned with a particularly grumpy badger or a surprisingly agile unicorn, or the battle flags of a king, symbolizing his divine right to rule, not the collective will of the populace. But as the age of absolute monarchies began to fray around the edges, like an old tapestry left out in the sun, a new concept started to solidify: the nation-state. This wasn't just a king and his subjects. This was a people bound by shared language, culture, and often a newfound desire for self-determination. And what better way for a self-determining people to declare their existence, their sovereignty, their very distinct flavor of being, than with a brand new, boldly striped, eye-catching piece of fabric? Think of the Dutch Republic, for instance. Long before many other European powers even considered such a thing, they adopted what became known as the Prinsenvlag, orange, white, and blue. This wasn't some royal decree handed down from on high. It was a symbol born from their struggle for independence against Spanish rule in the 16th century. It represented a collective identity, a burgeoning sense of Dutchness that went beyond loyalty to a specific monarch. This, my friend, was a mainstream historical fact that basically launched 1,000 ships, or at least 1,000 flag designs. It showed everyone else, hey, this whole nation thing, it needs its own brand identity. And just like any good brand identity, it had to be distinctive, memorable, and, ideally, not accidentally identical to your neighbor's new kitchen curtains. Now, speaking of distinctive, you'd think designing these momentous national symbols would be a solemn, perhaps even divinely inspired process. Sometimes it was. Other times it was less divine inspiration and more, let's just pick 3 colors we all vaguely like and hope for the best. Take the French tricolor, born from the fiery crucible of the French Revolution. It combined the white of the old Bourbon monarchy with the blue and red of Paris. It was a revolutionary flag, a statement, and yet the combination itself was almost practical. Blue and red were common revolutionary colors, and white was a nod to continuity, even as they chopped off the heads of continuity. Historians still argue whether the sudden proliferation of national flags was a top-down decree from nascent governments, neatly designed in hushed rooms, or a bottom-up expression of popular unity, bubbling up from the streets and battlefields. Was it always a clear, conscious decision, or more of an accidental, oops, guess we need a flag now that we've overthrown everything sort of vibe? The debate rages on, probably over tiny espresso cups in very old libraries. And this is where it gets a little precarious. You might be admiring the crisp lines of a newly unfurled national flag, feeling that swell of unity and purpose, thinking, wow, cool flag. But back then, wearing the wrong colors in the wrong alley, or, heaven forbid, displaying the wrong flag in a newly liberated city. Yeah, you probably won't survive this. These weren't just pretty patterns. They were visceral declarations of loyalty, of allegiance, of who you were willing to die for. If a country's identity was now literally stitched into its fabric, then being identified with the wrong fabric could be, well, fatal. It's a bit like showing up to a fancy dinner party in a t-shirt that clearly supports the rival sports team. Except the rival sports team has cannons. You remember how we talked about those tricky ancient dyes, the ones that demanded crocodile dung or crushed beetles just to get a passable shade of purple. Well now, with nations wanting to stand out, the demand for vibrant, stable colors for these new flags went through the roof. Imagine the poor dyers, suddenly faced with orders for miles of rich crimson or deep indigo, all needing to be perfectly consistent. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about recognition. A nation's flag needed to be identifiable from a distance, even through cannon smoke or sea mist. This led to a surprising innovation in textile production, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with dyes and weaving. For all the lofty ideals these flags represented, their very existence often hinged on the humble, yet incredibly complex chemistry of color. It's almost funny when you think about it. After centuries of personal symbols of a king's crest or a noble's family motto, suddenly, everyone was expected to rally behind a geometric design, a carefully chosen trio of stripes, a star field. It was the birth of corporate branding, but for entire populations. You had to learn to love your national logo, and it wasn't always an easy sell. Some early designs were, shall we say, a bit uninspired. There were proposals for flags that looked less like symbols of national pride and more like someone's laundry day gone wrong. One quirky tidbit: the early flag designs for some fledgling nations were incredibly complicated, almost like a heraldic coat of arms translated poorly onto a rectangle. Imagine trying to quickly sketch that on a battlefield banner or sew it onto a sailor's uniform. Thankfully, simplicity often won out, probably due to the sheer impracticality of reproducing intricate designs thousands of times over. The more accessible, the more enduring. Because really, if your flag requires a magnifying glass and an art history degree to understand, it's probably not going to inspire a whole lot of immediate, passionate patriotism. And as the world continued to shrink through exploration and trade, these national stripes became the unmistakable calling cards of power, of diplomacy, and of every single new conflict brewing on the horizon. You stand on cobbled streets, the air thick with something electric, something that hums with the scent of gunpowder and the raw, untamed hunger for change. It's not the quiet dignity of a royal banner fluttering from a castle turret anymore, is it? No, you're catching glimpses of something else entirely: scraps of cloth, hastily stitched, perhaps crudely painted, but pulsing with a defiant energy that makes your stomach clench. This isn't about inherited power or ancient lineage. This is about a collective roar, a popular uprising, and the flags that become their furious, vivid voices. Remember those fancy silk standards from noble families? Toss them out the window, because here, in the crucible of revolution, the flag sheds its aristocratic skin and dons the rough, ready uniform of the common man. It's no longer a distant symbol of authority. It's thrust into your hands, a tangible piece of the dream, a dare whispered on the wind, or sometimes a shout from the barricades. You might scoff, thinking, it's just fabric. But try telling that to the person charging into a hail of musket fire, their eyes fixed on a scrap of calico emblazoned with a coiled snake. Take, for instance, the fledgling American colonies. They weren't just fighting for independence. They were fighting to invent a new kind of nation. And what do you do when you're trying to tell an empire, actually, no, we're good, without a megaphone? You whip up a flag. The Gadsden flag, for example, with its bright yellow field and that rather grumpy-looking rattlesnake poised to strike, bearing the words, "Don't tread on me." It wasn't the official flag, not yet, but it was a primal scream, a clear warning. Imagine you're a British soldier, marching along, and suddenly you see that vivid yellow and that coiled reptile. You'd probably think, oh, wonderful, now even the snakes are getting political. You're probably thinking, hey, I'd totally join that revolution. But honestly, you'd probably just get a nasty cough from the smoke and then run away at the first sign of a proper bayonet charge. Still, the image stuck. It was simple, aggressive, and understood instantly. Mess with us and we bite. This wasn't some abstract heraldry, it was a promise delivered with a fanged smile. Then sweep across the Atlantic to the swirling chaos of revolutionary France. The Bastille has fallen, the monarchy is teetering, and the streets are awash not just with blood, but with a new kind of patriotism. No longer the royal white banner with its golden fleur-de-lis, France needed a flag that screamed liberty, equality, fraternity. And so, the tricolor was born blue, white, and red. The blue and red were the colors of Paris, the city where the revolution simmered and then boiled over. The white, interestingly, was the color of the Bourbon monarchy. You might think, why keep the old oppressor's color? Well, the French tricolor became the national flag of France in 1794, evolving from the cockades worn by revolutionaries who first combined the Parisian colors with the white of the royal house, not as a sign of loyalty, but perhaps as a symbolic embrace, or even a defiant absorption of the old order into the new. It was a visually potent statement. The people of Paris, united with the idea of France itself, now held the reins. Historians still argue whether the colors of the French tricolor were purely symbolic, representing the ideals of the Revolution, or a practical amalgamation of Parisian and royal colors, a clever piece of political branding. Either way, it caught fire. Suddenly, every citizen could feel a connection to this bold, new standard. It was their flag, not the king's. This wasn't just a French or American phenomenon. The very idea of flags as tools of popular rebellion began to spread like wildfire. When people felt oppressed, when they wanted to tear down the old structures and build something new, they looked to fabric. The red flag, for instance, first made sporadic appearances during the French Revolution as a symbol of martial law and defiance, but later gained prominence as the international symbol of socialism and workers' movements. It was a stark, uncompromising color, representing the blood of the workers and the fervor of revolution. And did you know, before the iconic red, some early workers' movements in the mid-19th century actually used black flags, not for anarchy, but as a symbol of no surrender. It was about refusing to bow down, literally taking a stand without a white flag in sight. These rebellious colors weren't just about identity, they were about direction. They showed you where to gather, who to trust or distrust, and what you were fighting for. They were propaganda on a pole, rallying cries woven into thread. A flag could mean the difference between a disorganized mob and a unified force, giving a nameless, faceless crowd a singular identity, a shared purpose that transcended individual fears. So next time you see a flag waving, remember it's not just a piece of fabric. It's a story, often a bloody one, sometimes a terrifying one, but always a testament to the human desire to challenge, to change, and to wave their truth for all the world to see. Palette of purposeful hues. Decipher the universal and specific meanings embedded within flag colors like red, white, and blue. You close your eyes, and even in the inky blackness, echoes of yesterday's vibrant narratives still paint behind your eyelids. Remember those ancient banners, the ones whispering tales of forgotten battles and noble lineages, or the silken signals guiding ships across treacherous seas. They weren't just random scraps of fabric, oh no. Every thread, every stitch, every carefully chosen hue held a secret, a silent declaration. And tonight, as the world outside fades into muted tones, we're going to peek behind that colorful curtain. Because, you see, the colors on a flag aren't just pretty pigments. They're concentrated meaning, distilled history, and sometimes a promise written in the blood of generations. Let's start with red, shall we? You can practically feel the heat radiating from it, can't you? Red, in the vast tapestry of human symbolism, is rarely subtle. It screams. It's the color of lifeblood, of course, but also of sacrifice, courage, and often war. When you see a flag emblazoned with red, your subconscious is already preparing for intensity. Think of the revolutionary fervor, the raw, unbridled passion that sweeps across nations. The French tricolor, for instance, has a vibrant red stripe that, among other things, signifies the courage and sacrifice of the people during their own dramatic upheaval. It's the hue of fiery defiance, of movements that burn brightly and reshape the world. And let's be honest, it's also the color of a really good, strong cup of coffee, which, given the amount of history we're cramming in, you probably won't survive this fact-packed journey without needing several. But hey, at least you'll be an expert on flag semiotics when you finally succumb to blissful unconsciousness. The mainstream historical fact here is pretty straightforward. Across countless cultures and centuries, red has consistently been adopted by revolutionary movements and socialist states. From the Soviet Union's hammer and sickle banner to the red flags carried by protesters demanding change, it's a powerful, unmistakable symbol of radical transformation, often born from bloodshed and fierce determination. But here's a quirky tidbit for you. Did you know that in some ancient cultures, particularly in parts of Africa, red was also associated with spiritual power and protection from evil, rather than purely aggression? It was thought to ward off malevolent spirits, turning a symbol of earthly conflict into a spiritual shield. It makes you wonder how a color can hold such diametrically opposed meanings, depending on which ancient scroll you're reading. Then we drift to white. Imagine the gentle whisper of a fresh snowfall, the pristine calm of a cloudless sky, or perhaps the unsettling stillness of a doctor's waiting room. White on a flag almost universally conveys purity, peace, and innocence. It's the clean slate, the unblemished ideal. It's why a white flag is recognized globally as a sign of surrender, a plea for cessation of hostilities, though one might argue it also implies, "Okay, you win, can we just be done with this?" The symbolism is crystal clear. A desire for truce, for a return to an unsullied state. Many national flags, from the United States to India, incorporate white to represent values like honesty, integrity, or national unity untainted by internal strife. It's the color of new beginnings, of hope, and of that perfectly crisp shirt you ironed before promptly spilling coffee on it. Finally, we arrive at blue. Ah, blue, the vastness of the sky, the depth of the ocean, the calm steadiness of a tranquil lake. On flags, blue typically embodies justice, loyalty, perseverance, and vigilance. It's the color of stability, of enduring principles, and of a government that, ideally, remains as steadfast and unyielding as the horizon. Think of the deep blue of the European Union flag, symbolizing unity and truth among its member states, or the vibrant blue in the United States flag, representing vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Historically, blue dyes were often expensive and difficult to produce, making blue a color associated with royalty and nobility, adding another layer of prestige to its symbolic weight. It suggests a certain gravitas, a serious commitment to the ideals it represents. Historians still argue whether the universal interpretation of certain colors, like red signifying danger or passion, or blue representing calm and stability, is an innate human response to our environment or purely a product of shared cultural evolution passed down through the ages. It's a chicken and egg question, but for now, just imagine the silent power in those carefully chosen hues, telling a story without uttering a single word. And while the vibrant hues of flags certainly paint a picture, whispering tailies in red, white, and blue, or the solemn green of a desert oasis, it's often the shapes emblazoned upon them that truly lock away the deepest secrets. You gaze up at a fluttering banner, perhaps on a mild Tuesday afternoon, and your eyes instinctively snag on the sharp edges, the curved lines, the perfect symmetry of a star, or the elegant sweep of a crescent. These aren't just pretty patterns, my friend. They are geometric hieroglyphs, coded messages from centuries past, each point an arc laden with meaning that, if you truly understood it all, would probably make your brain do a little internal soft reset. You probably won't survive this mental exercise with your previous conceptions of flag design intact, honestly. Consider the star, for instance. Oh, the humble star. It twinkles innocuously enough in the night sky, but on a flag, it often represents far more than just a distant sun. Take the 50 stars on the United States flag, a constellation of states, each a sovereign entity yet bound together in an unbreakable union. That's the classic mainstream historical fact right there. A star for every state, a simple yet profound visual shorthand for federalism. But stars stretch far beyond the American dream. Look at the Chinese flag, with its large yellow star symbolizing the Communist Party, orbited by 4 smaller stars representing the 4 social classes, all unified under one ideology. Or the European Union flag, a circle of 12 golden stars on a blue field, not for 12 member states, as is a common misconception, but a symbol of perfection, completeness, and unity, an ancient numerical significance derived from various cultural and religious contexts. It's almost as if they said, let's just pick a number that sounds nice and looks even, which honestly is peak bureaucratic efficiency. Then you have the elegant, enigmatic crescent moon, often accompanied by a star. You see it on the flags of Turkey, Pakistan, Malaysia, and many other nations with significant Muslim populations. This isn't just about gazing at the night sky. The crescent and star became potent symbols for the Ottoman Empire, and by extension, for Islam itself. It speaks of spiritual guidance, progress, and light in darkness. Historically, the crescent was a widely used symbol even before the advent of Islam, appearing on ancient coins, and as a sign of royalty or divinity in various cultures. Its adoption by the nascent Islamic empires was a gradual process, but it solidified its place as an instantly recognizable emblem. A quirky tidbit. The crescent moon and star actually predate Islam by thousands of years, appearing on the standards of ancient Sumerian and Egyptian deities. It was adopted by the city of Byzantium, later Constantinople, now Istanbul long before it became the capital of the Ottoman Empire, initially as a pagan symbol associated with the goddess Diana or Hecate. The Ottomans simply inherited it and infused it with new meaning. It's a bit like taking a really old, comfy armchair and ruffle-stirring it for your own palace. And then we glide gracefully, or perhaps geometrically, to the cross. Oh, the cross, a symbol so pervasive it hardly needs introduction. From the stark red cross on Switzerland's flag, signifying neutrality and aid, to the complex arrangement on the United Kingdom's Union Jack. The Union Jack itself is a masterclass in geometric layering, combining the red cross of St. George, England, the white saltire of St. Andrew, Scotland, and the red saltire of St. Patrick, Ireland. It's a visual representation of union, a tapestry of nations woven together with symbolic threads. This isn't just a Christian symbol. It's a design element that has stood for protection, sacrifice, and interconnectedness across countless cultures for millennia. Historians still argue whether the precise dimensions and angles of the saltires in the early versions of the Union flag were purely aesthetic or held deeper, perhaps even numerological, significance known only to the vexillographers of the day. You wonder if they just sketched it out on a napkin and said, "Yeah, that looks British enough." Beyond these big three, a whole menagerie of geometric shapes dances across the world's flags. Take Nepal, for instance, with its utterly unique double pennon shape, featuring two overlapping triangles. It's the only national flag that isn't a quadrilateral. These triangles are said to represent the Himalayan mountains and the two major religions of Nepal, Hinduism and Buddhism. They also symbolize peace and hard work. It's quite practical, too, if you're trying to find it in a pile of rectangular laundry. Circles and discs, meanwhile, often speak of unity, totality, and celestial bodies. The brilliant red disc on Japan's flag, the Hinamaru, famously represents the sun goddess Amaterasu and the rising sun, a powerful symbol of national origin and destiny. Similarly, Bangladesh features a red disc on a green field, symbolizing the rising sun over the green lands of Bangladesh, but also the blood of those who sacrificed for independence. It's a profound reminder that these seemingly simple shapes can carry the weight of a nation's soul. And let's not forget those delightfully specific heraldic shapes that migrated from medieval shields to national banners. You see chevrons, those inverted V's, often signifying strength or the roof of a house, as seen on the flag of Jordan where it points towards the future. There are fesses, horizontal bands across the middle, and bends, diagonal stripes, all with their own specific, often obscure heraldic meanings rooted in the history of noble families and their territorial claims. They're like ancient QR codes, just without the ability to scan them with your phone to find out that Sir Reginald the Pompous once owned a rather large turnip farm. Each line, each angle, each division of the flag's field tells a story, sometimes of a river, sometimes of a mountain range, sometimes of a victorious battle, all encoded in a visual language that has evolved over thousands of years. It's a silent, ever-present narrative, fluttering in the breeze, waiting for you to decipher its many, many layers. You stand on the bustling pier, salty air whipping past your face, and your eyes drift upwards, past the gulls squawking their breakfast demands, to the taut, colorful squares of fabric snapping against the endless blue. They dance, they undulate, they strain against their halyards, and without uttering a single audible sound, they are telling stories. Complex narratives of arrival and departure, of sovereignty and alliance, of warning and welcome. This, my sleepy friend, is the silent, intricate language of vexillology, a communication system so ancient and pervasive. It makes your modern emojis look like clumsy crayon drawings. Remember those early humans, waving their animal skins, or the tribal banners unfurled on ancient battlefields, or even the seaborne silken signals we discussed. Each of those, in its own way, was a single, powerful word, a declarative statement. But as societies grew, as nations coalesced, these simple pronouncements evolved. They didn't just say, "We are here," or "This is ours." They began to tell you who we were, what ours meant, and why it mattered. Imagine a world before instant messaging, before satellite phones, heck, even before widespread literacy. How do you communicate a nuanced message across a vast battlefield, or a coded warning across churning seas? You do it with cloth, with color, with geometry. You create a lexicon of light and shadow, a grammar of the breeze. A red stripe isn't just red. It's a whisper of courage, a shout of sacrifice, a quiet acknowledgement of shared blood spilled. A white field isn't merely blank. It can speak of peace, of purity, of surrender, or of the stark, unblemished truth. And a blue canton, a patch of azure in the corner, might evoke the expansive sky, the depths of the ocean, or the very notion of justice and vigilance. You see how those palette of purposeful hues, once just pretty colors, become a vocabulary. It's not just the colors, though. Oh no, the geometric secrets are profound. A star, for instance, isn't just a sparkly shape. For some, it represents individual states united under one banner, like the ever-increasing constellation on the flag of the United States. Each new star marking a new member in the celestial club. For others, it's a guiding light, a symbol of divine blessing, or even a socialist ideal. The crescent moon, often seen alongside a star, can signify faith, progress, or the dawning of a new era. A cross, too, has manifold interpretations, from religious devotion to a simple geographical marker. Each line, each angle, each empty space within a flag's design is a deliberate stroke in a painting meant to be understood without a single accompanying word. Consider the complexity of a country's flag, say, the Union Jack of the United Kingdom. It's not just a pretty pattern, is it? It's a masterful piece of visual communication, a merger of separate national identities into one unified whole. You have the red cross of St. George for England, superimposed with the white saltire of St. Andrew for Scotland, and then, overlaid again, the red saltire of St. Patrick for Ireland. Each layer tells a historical tale of union, of shared heritage, a silent agreement etched in fabric. It's a mainstream historical fact that this layered design was a brilliant, if perhaps politically forced, visual statement of nation building. It communicated, we are one, yet we remember our distinct parts. And if you were to misinterpret those specific cross arrangements in, say, a naval battle in the 18th century, you probably wouldn't survive the next volley, because that flag was telling you exactly who was friend and who was foe. A cheeky reality check, perhaps, but historically accurate. But what about the truly quirky ways flags speak? Did you know some flags communicate through their absence of color, or through specific, almost imperceptible shifts in their hoist or fly? Take maritime signal flags, for example. Those vibrant, individual pennants, each with a specific color pattern, aren't just decorative. Each one represents a letter of the alphabet, or a number, or a common phrase. Hoist a single flag, say, the yellow and blue square of Lima, and it means you should stop your vessel immediately. No words, just a square of cloth. Hoist another, the red and white rectangle of hotel, and it signals, I have a pilot on board. It's an entire silent conversation happening across the waves, a sort of visual Morse code for ships. It's like the flags are gossiping behind your back, only they're doing it for vital navigational safety. There are even flags designed to be deliberately ambiguous, or to communicate subtly different messages depending on who is viewing them. Historians still argue whether the precise dimensions and placement of certain national emblems within a flag's field were primarily for aesthetic balance, or if they encoded a deeper, almost mystical significance understood only by a select few. Was that slightly off-center star a cosmic alignment, or just a drafting error? We may never know, but the debate itself highlights the depth of meaning we ascribe to these pieces of fabric. So when you see a flag fluttering, don't just see a piece of cloth on a pole. Hear its silent stories. Understand its wordless arguments. Listen to the histories it whispers on the wind, the aspirations it shouts towards the heavens, and the complex declarations it makes without ever opening its mouth. It's a language you've been learning your whole life, even if you didn't realize it. And it's one of the oldest, most powerful forms of communication known to humanity. You've learned how flags whisper their secrets, how their colors and shapes tell tales without a single sound. But what happens when that silent language meets the real world, the world of people and protocols? You're walking now, the quiet hum of the air around you, perhaps a gentle breeze stirring the leaves. You see a flag, crisp and vibrant, unfurling against the sky. It isn't just fabric. It's a living entity, imbued with a dignity that demands discipline, an unspoken set of rules governing its every moment, from dawn to dusk, from celebration to sorrow. Imagine standing on a parade ground, the air thick with anticipation, or aboard a ship, the vast ocean stretching endlessly. The flag isn't merely hoisted, it's raised. Each movement is precise, almost ceremonial. There's a particular way it ascends, never touching the ground, always treated as something profoundly precious. Let it drag on the dirt, let it become a doormat, and you've committed a cardinal sin in the silent world of vexillology. You think you know your manners. Try displaying a national flag upside down, even by accident, and in some contexts, you probably won't survive this diplomatic incident without a severe dressing down, if not worse. It's the ultimate international oops moment. These rules aren't arbitrary. They stem from a deep, almost primal understanding of what a flag represents. Remember how banners in battlefields were rallying points. To protect the flag was to protect the very heart of the fighting force, the collective will. That respect, born of survival and unity, gradually codified into the intricate etiquette we observe today. You salute it, you stand at attention, your hand over your heart, acknowledging not just the fabric, but the nation, the people, the ideals woven into its very threads. One of the most universally recognized protocols, the act of flying a flag at half-mast, whispers a story of sorrow and remembrance. This solemn tradition, where the flag is lowered to roughly 2/3 of the way down the flagpole, signifies mourning. While its exact origins are debated, a popular theory traces it back to the 17th century, when a ship's captain, upon hearing of the death of Queen Elizabeth I, ordered his flag lowered to allow an invisible flag of death to fly above it. Another story suggests it allowed space for the flag of mourning to be hoisted above, a black pennant. Regardless, it's a global gesture, a visual pause in the hurly-burly of life, a collective moment of quiet grief. And then there's the art of folding. It's not just crumpling it up and stuffing it in a drawer. Oh no. For some flags, like the American flag, it's a meticulous, precise ritual involving 13 triangular folds, each fold representing a specific ideal or virtue. It's like origami for patriots, only with more starch and less chance of it becoming a tiny crane. The folded flag, a perfect triangle, resembles a cocked hat, reminiscent of the hats worn by continental soldiers. This careful handling ensures the flag is stored respectfully, ready for its next display, a neat little package of national pride. What about its material life? A flag, like all things, wears out. The sun bleaches, the wind tears, and eventually it becomes tattered, faded, no longer fit for display. You don't just toss it in the bin. That would be unthinkable. The dignified retirement of a flag often involves a ceremonial burning, a final, respectful act of disposal that ensures it never touches the ground or is treated as mere trash. This burning is a purification, a return to elemental form, acknowledging its service and inherent sacredness. But these rules aren't always straightforward. Consider the quirky details. Did you know that in Denmark, to fly a foreign flag without specific permission from the police is generally against the law, unless it's a Nordic flag or an EU flag? It's a polite nation, but they take their flag rules seriously. Perhaps a little too seriously if you're just trying to declare your love for international cuisine with a flag banner. And if you ever accidentally let it touch the ground, don't worry. The flag police aren't going to abseil through your window, but you might feel a sudden, inexplicable chill, a phantom shiver down the spine of every patriot in a 5-mile radius. The discipline extends to its very display. A flag should never be used as clothing, bedding, or drapery. It shouldn't be printed on paper napkins or disposable items. These rules exist because to use a flag in such ways diminishes its symbolic power, reducing it from a national emblem to a mere decorative pattern. Finding the perfect flagpole height is an art form, a bit like choosing the right length of holiday lights. Too short, and it looks like a tea towel. Too long, and it's practically trying to signal Mars. It needs to be just right, allowing the flag to fly freely, majestically, without snagging or appearing cramped. Historians still argue whether the elaborate flag ceremonies we see today are a natural evolution of ancient reverence or a more modern invention designed to solidify national identity. Perhaps it's a blend of both, a conscious effort to imbue a relatively new concept, the nation-state, with the timeless sanctity once reserved for deities or kings. The rules, whether ancient or modern, serve to reinforce the flag's power, its ability to unite, to inspire, and to remember. They transform a simple piece of fabric into a repository of collective memory, a beacon of shared values, guarded by a meticulous, almost silent code of conduct. You feel the weight of that history, the solemnity of generations past, in every ripple of the fabric, every precise fold, every respectful salute. Crafting modern identity. Investigate the principles and challenges of designing a new flag for contemporary times. You drift now, not on ancient seas, nor through the dust of battle, but into the hushed, almost sterile realm of the design studio. Imagine the scent of fresh coffee lingering, the low hum of computers, and the quiet rustle of large sheets of paper being unfurled. Here, in this very modern crucible, the future identity of nations, cities, even ambitious corporate entities, takes form on fabric. You are witnessing the birth of a new flag, a symbol destined to flutter in the wind, yes, but also to embed itself in the collective unconscious of millions. It's a task far more daunting than you might imagine, a tightrope walk between art, history, politics, and the notoriously fickle beast of public opinion. If you thought picking out new curtains was tough, try deciding on the very soul of a country for the next few centuries. Good luck. You probably won't survive the committee meetings, let alone the online backlash. So how does one even begin to craft a modern identity on a piece of cloth? The principles are deceptively simple, almost poetic in their brevity. Vexillologists, those flag enthusiasts we chatted about earlier, often point to a handful of golden rules. First, simplicity. A flag, they argue, should be so simple that a child can draw it from memory. Think of Japan's red disc on white, or Canada's elegant maple leaf. These aren't just pretty pictures. They're instantly recognizable mnemonics, cultural shorthand. The eye drinks them in, the brain registers them, and poof, instant recognition. You don't need a degree in art history to appreciate the power of that simplicity. Second, meaningful symbolism. Every element, every color, every shape should tell a story. Not a literal, wordy story, mind you, but a symbolic one. The blue might represent the ocean or the sky, the green, lush lands, the stars, hope, or unity. Remember how the colors red, white, and blue, despite their commonality, held vastly different meanings depending on the nation. This is where the true artistry lies, in distilling complex national narratives into universally understood visual cues. It's like trying to write an epic novel using only emojis. Challenging, right? But when done well, it resonates deep within us, an unspoken agreement about who we are and what we stand for. Third, use 2 or 3 basic colors. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about practicality. Too many colors become visually muddy, difficult to reproduce accurately, and expensive to manufacture. It's why you rarely see a flag that looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. And while we're talking about what not to do, a critical principle is to avoid lettering or seals. A flag isn't a billboard. If you have to read it to understand it, it's failed as a flag. Its purpose is to be seen from a distance, fluttering high, communicating at a glance. Imagine trying to read "Welcome to Ohio" from a flag atop a distant pole. You'd need bionic eyes, or at least a powerful telescope. And speaking of Ohio, while it has a unique swallowtail pennant shape, its state flag, like many U.S. state flags that incorporate complex seals and text, is often cited as a prime example of what not to do in modern flag design. It's a mainstream historical fact that many older state flags, especially in the U.S., violate nearly every principle of good vexillology, leading to recent movements for redesign. Now, here's the really juicy part: the challenges of designing a new flag for contemporary times. We live in a hyper-connected, hyper-diverse world. Nations are rarely monocultures anymore. How do you create a symbol that genuinely represents everyone, from the oldest descendant of founding peoples to the newest immigrant seeking refuge and opportunity? This is where the simple principles run headfirst into the brick wall of reality. Take, for instance, the thorny issue of historical baggage. An old flag might evoke pride for some, but for others, it might represent oppression, conquest, or a painful past. When South Africa, in 1994, adopted its vibrant new flag, it was a deliberate act of reconciliation, a visual breaking away from the divisive past of apartheid. The design, a Y shape moving into a single horizontal band, symbolizing convergence and the country's diverse elements coming together, was a powerful, forward-looking statement. It's a testament to the idea that a flag can be a balm, a unifier. But what if your nation's history isn't so easily compartmentalized? What if different groups interpret the past through entirely different lenses? This is where the debates rage, not just among politicians, but among scholars. Historians still argue whether the complexity of modern identity makes a truly unifying flag impossible, or if a simplified design is simply too reductive for a diverse populace. It's a fascinating, nuanced discussion, far beyond what you might expect from a conversation about a piece of cloth. Then there's the quirky or fringe tidbit of flag literacy, or rather, the lack thereof. In an increasingly visual world, you might think people are more adept at interpreting symbols. But often, the opposite is true. Many people couldn't tell you the meaning behind the specific stars on their own national flag, let alone the subtle curves of an obscure national emblem. So, how do you design something that speaks to a population that might not speak the language of vexillology? You need a design that feels right, that resonates emotionally, even if the precise meaning is lost to the casual observer. It's like a catchy pop song. You might not know what every lyric means, but you still tap your foot. Moreover, the digital age presents its own challenges. A flag designed for a physical pole must also look good on a tiny screen icon, a social media profile picture, or a gaming avatar. Does it scale down well? Is it recognizable when pixelated? The simple designs usually win here. Imagine trying to accurately reproduce a complex seal with tiny text on a smartwatch. It would just be a blurry mess, like trying to read a menu in a dark restaurant without your glasses. This is why many cities and organizations are opting for cleaner, bolder designs, embracing minimalism not just as an aesthetic choice, but as a functional necessity in the omnipresent digital realm. The challenge isn't just to make it iconic, it's to make it digital-proof. So, when a nation embarks on the quest for a new flag, it's not merely a design project. It's an exercise in collective self-definition. It's a public conversation about what matters, what defines a people, and what aspirations they hold for the future. It's the ultimate expression of identity, woven into fabric, destined to flutter over generations, quietly affirming who they are every single day. And sometimes, just sometimes, they actually get it right. You've seen how flags can stitch a nation together, weave a new identity into the fabric of a people, a seamless tapestry of shared dreams and aspirations. But now, as the gentle hum of the night grows deeper, you're about to confront the frayed edges, the torn seams, the unsettling truth that some banners, even those crafted with hope, are drenched in the shadows of contested fabrics. You feel it, don't you? That subtle shift in the air, a tension that hangs heavy, almost like static electricity before a storm. It's the uncomfortable quiet before you delve into the flags that don't just wave, they accuse. They don't just unite, they divide. And honestly, if you're not prepared for a few uncomfortable truths, you probably won't survive this section with your rose-tinted glasses intact. You imagine yourself standing at the precipice of memory, looking down at symbols that refuse to lie still, even buried deep in the past. Take, for instance, the infamous Hakenkreuz, the hooked cross, seared into the collective consciousness as the emblem of Nazi Germany. For most, its sight immediately conjures images of unspeakable atrocities, systematic genocide, and the terrifying machinery of totalitarianism. It's not just a flag. It's a scar on humanity's soul, a stark reminder of how potent a symbol can become when wielded by monstrous ideologies. The very act of displaying it in many parts of the world, particularly Germany, is a criminal offense, a legal testament to the profound pain it continues to inflict. You almost feel the chill wind of history whistling past your ears, carrying the echoes of never again. Yet, not all flags of oppression are so universally condemned, which is where things get truly complicated. Think of the Confederate battle flag, for example. To some, particularly in the southern United States, it's a proud emblem of heritage, a symbol of ancestors who fought bravely, even if on the losing side of a civil war. They might tell you it represents states' rights, Southern pride, a bygone era. But for millions of others, especially African Americans, that same banner is a painful reminder of slavery, racial segregation, and white supremacy. It's a symbol of chains, not freedom, of subjugation, not pride. You can almost hear the whispered arguments in the air, a cacophony of conflicting narratives that refuse to reconcile. It's a bit like trying to agree on the best flavor of ice cream, except the stakes are, slightly higher than a sugar rush. This isn't just about ancient history either. You can see it playing out right now, in the constant push and pull over flags that represent ongoing conflicts and divisions. The flag of apartheid South Africa, for instance, a symbol of institutionalized racial segregation, was ultimately taken down and replaced by a vibrant, unifying flag in 1994. Yet for some, the old flag still represents a longing for a past that should never be revisited. It's like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. The mess, once made, leaves a lasting stain, doesn't it? The power of these contested fabrics lies in their ability to embody a selective memory, to champion one narrative while silencing another. They are not merely pieces of cloth. They are battlegrounds of ideology, stitched with the hopes and fears of different groups. When you see a flag from a breakaway region, or one flown by a protest movement deemed extremist by the state, you're witnessing this live, unfolding drama. It's a silent shout, a declaration of identity and intent that often clashes violently with the established order. You might wonder, how does a flag, a seemingly innocuous collection of colors and shapes, accumulate such overwhelming historical baggage? It's because, as we saw with the birth of national stripes and rebellious revolutionary colors, flags are never truly neutral. They are born from moments of intense emotion, conflict, and aspiration. And sometimes, those aspirations are built on the suffering of others. The very act of designing a flag is, in essence, an act of storytelling. But like any good story, it depends on who's telling it, and whose voices are amplified, and crucially, whose are drowned out. Historians still argue whether the removal of such symbols truly erases their legacy, or merely pushes the underlying ideologies further underground, making them more resilient, more subversive. It's a debate as old as the symbols themselves, and just as knotty. Consider the complexity of a flag's meaning morphing over time. Sometimes, a symbol originally benign or even sacred can be twisted and corrupted. The swastika, remember, was an ancient symbol of peace and prosperity across many cultures for millennia, before it was co-opted and irrevocably tainted by Nazism. It's a tragic testament to how a potent visual language can be hijacked, its original meaning obliterated beneath layers of horror. It's like your favorite song suddenly becoming the jingle for a terrible car commercial. You can never quite hear it the same way again, can you? You see this struggle in places like Northern Ireland, where different flags, British Union Jacks and Irish tricolours, continue to mark territorial and political divides, representing deep-seated historical grievances and ongoing identity conflicts. Even the way these flags are displayed, the height they fly, the proximity to other flags, becomes a coded language of assertion and defiance. It's a grim ballet of vexillology, performed with real human stakes. Each fold, each ripple in the breeze, can carry the weight of generations of struggle and sorrow. These aren't just decorative elements for a parade. They are living, breathing embodiments of unhealed wounds. The air hums with a different kind of energy now, doesn't it? You're not standing on a dusty battlefield, nor are you squinting through sea spray from a creaking mast. Instead, you feel the press of bodies around you. A rhythmic chant rises and falls, and above it all, a forest of fabric ripples and snaps. These aren't the neatly hemmed, officially sanctioned standards you've grown accustomed to seeing draped from public buildings or flying proudly from a ship's stern. Oh no. These flags are alive, imbued with a raw, pulsating urgency. They're carried by hands that might be calloused from work, or delicate from quiet rebellion, but all united by a shared, insistent message. You watch as a large sheet of faded blue fabric, perhaps once a bedsheet, billows past, crudely emblazoned with a hand-painted symbol. It's not about pomp and circumstance anymore. It's about making a statement, loudly and unmistakably, even if the only sound is the wind catching the cloth. It's fascinating, isn't it, how a symbol of order can be so readily repurposed into a banner of defiance. Think back to those national flags we discussed, born from the fervor of emerging sovereign states. Well, now you see them twisted, literally, upside down to signal distress or protest against the very government they usually represent. Or perhaps they're defaced, spray-painted with slogans that drip with disillusionment, or burnt in a symbolic act of ultimate rejection. It's like taking the king's own scepter and using it to whack him on the head. Talk about ironic, right? You'd think the designers of those pristine national emblems would have foreseen such a dramatic turn of events. But then again, who plans for their artistic creation to be used as a blunt instrument of social upheaval? But it's not just about repurposing existing flags. Movements, whether social or political, have this uncanny knack for conjuring new ones into existence, practically out of thin air. Take, for instance, the evolution of the rainbow flag. It didn't just pop into being fully formed from a government decree. No, it was sown, piece by vibrant piece, by Gilbert Baker in San Francisco in 1978. A grassroots creation meant to represent the diversity and unity of the LGBTQ+ community. It's a beautifully simple concept, isn't it? Each color carrying its own specific meaning: life, healing, sunlight, nature, harmony, spirit, woven into a universal symbol of pride and acceptance. It's a powerful counterpoint to the rigid, often exclusive imagery of traditional flags. And unlike, say, the process of getting a new national flag approved, which probably involves more committee meetings than a cat has whiskers, the rainbow flag was adopted organically, embraced by a community eager for its own visible identity. Then there are the flags that speak of a different kind of struggle, often one against economic or political oppression. The red flag, for instance, became an internationally recognized symbol of socialism, communism, and various left-wing movements. Its origins are a little murky, as with many potent symbols, but one prominent theory ties it to the French Revolution, where it was initially used by the National Guard to declare martial law, a symbol of order. But then, as often happens in the chaotic crucible of revolution, the very people being suppressed flipped its meaning. They adopted it, the blood-red color now representing the blood shed by the working class in their struggle against exploitation. It's a stark reminder that meaning is never static. It's a living thing, sculpted by human experience and defiance. Historians still argue whether the red flag's protest symbolism truly solidified during the Paris Commune of 1871, or if its roots go even deeper into earlier workers' movements. It's a bit like trying to pinpoint the exact moment your teenager decided your advice was suddenly irrelevant. It just kind of happens. And what about the black flag? You might see it sometimes, fluttering ominously, representing anarchism, a philosophy that advocates for societies without government. The black, in this context, often symbolizes the absence of any flag, a rejection of all flags, states, and institutions. It's the ultimate anti-flag flag, if you will. But it's not just about a lack of color. Sometimes it's the combination that sends the clearest message. The black and red flag, for example, combines the anarchist black with the revolutionary red, signaling anarcho-syndicalism, or anarcho-communism movements that seek to achieve a stateless society through workers' solidarity and direct action. It's a visual shorthand for a complex ideology, compressed into two striking bands of color. You might even encounter flags that are more about a collective, often tongue-in-cheek, protest against the everyday absurdities of life. Think of things like the "Don't Tread on Me" Gadsden flag. Originally from the American Revolutionary War era, a symbol of early American resolve against British tyranny, it's seen a resurgence in modern times, adopted by various libertarian and conservative groups to express anti-government sentiment or a general distrust of authority. It's a curious historical tidbit, isn't it? A rattlesnake, a creature that gives a warning before it strikes, becoming an emblem of individual liberty. It's almost as if the snake is silently whispering, "Look, just leave me alone and we won't have any problems." But if you insist on treading, the power of these protest flags lies in their visibility and their ability to unite. Imagine standing in a massive crowd, feeling utterly insignificant, and then seeing thousands of identical or similar flags rise above the heads. Suddenly, you're part of something larger, a collective voice made visible. These flags become instant identifiers, turning disparate individuals into a formidable, coherent movement. They are rallying points in the truest sense, even if the battlefield is a city square or a legislative building. And here's a cheeky reality check for you. If you were ever a prominent flag waver in a truly revolutionary historical protest, chances are you probably wouldn't survive the day. Just a little historical encouragement to appreciate your cozy bed, eh? These adapted or newly minted flags often circumvent traditional power structures, broadcasting messages that mainstream media or political channels might suppress. They're a direct line of communication, instantly recognizable to allies and instantly provocative to opponents. They carry the weight of shared experience, of grievances, and of hopes. They tell a story without uttering a single word, speaking volumes in their silent, swaying presence. From the simple white flag of surrender, which in protest can mean a surrender to despair or a plea for mercy, to the intricate designs of indigenous rights movements that reclaim ancient symbols, each one is a thread in the vast, complex tapestry of human struggle and aspiration. Global Unity's cloth. Explore flags representing international cooperation, sports, and shared humanitarian ideals. You're standing, or perhaps gently swaying, amidst a sea of faces. Not hostile faces, not the grim determination you might have seen on ancient battlefields where banners rallied the troops, nor the defiant sneers under revolutionary colors. No, these faces are a mosaic of languages and cultures, united by something intangible, yet made utterly tangible by the vibrant swaths of fabric fluttering above. Imagine the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, a cacophony of cheers and music, where athletes from every corner of the planet parade under banners that seem to promise something more than just national pride. Or picture the hushed, dignified halls of the United Nations, where a single, serene blue flag dominates, whispering of diplomacy and shared humanity. These aren't the flags of conquest, or even solely of identity, but of aspiration, fragile perhaps, yet persistent. It's a curious shift, isn't it? From the personal heraldry of a noble or the very specific communication signals on the high seas, to a flag meant to encompass everyone. It's almost as if humanity, after centuries of drawing ever firmer lines in the sand, finally decided to try drawing a really, really big circle instead. And frankly, considering the complexities of international relations, the very existence of these flags sometimes feels like a small miracle. You'd think trying to get every nation on Earth to agree on the color of a tea towel, let alone a symbol of shared ideals, would be an endeavor that you probably won't survive, given the sheer number of strongly held opinions out there. Yet here we are. Take, for instance, the quintessential banner of global cooperation, the flag of the United Nations. It's a design of striking simplicity, really. A white emblem of the world map, showing all inhabited continents, minus Antarctica, presumably because even global unity needs to draw a line somewhere, and penguins don't have voting rights yet. This emblem is centered on a field of light blue, a color chosen to symbolize peace and hope. This wasn't some ancient scroll unveiled by a wise sage. The United Nations officially adopted its flag in October 1947, just a couple of years after the organization itself was founded. It's a mainstream historical fact, often overlooked, that this flag was meticulously designed not to represent any one nation, but all of them collectively. Its very purpose was to visually articulate the idea of an international body dedicated to preventing future conflicts, fostering human rights, and promoting social progress. It's a symbol meant to transcend the us versus them mentality that so many other flags historically were designed to embody. Think about it. A piece of cloth meant to say, "We're all in this together," even when we're definitely not all in agreement about who gets the last slice of pizza. Then you have the flags of shared ideals, often born from a necessity to provide aid across borders, regardless of conflict or creed. The Red Cross and Red Crescent movements, for instance, operate under flags instantly recognizable for their universal mission of humanitarian assistance. The Red Cross on a white background, mirroring the Swiss flag in inverse colors, was adopted in 1864 as a protective emblem for medical personnel and facilities in armed conflict. Later, the Red Crescent was added to accommodate nations with different cultural or religious symbols, particularly in the Ottoman Empire. These flags aren't just decorative. They're meant to be inviolable. They communicate without a single word. Help is here and it is neutral. It's a powerful, almost sacred language of neutrality, a visual promise of safety in chaos, a quirky tidbit. During its early years, some variations of the Red Cross emblem were proposed, including a red lion and sun in Persia, eventually leading to the addition of the Red Crescent, and later, the red crystal to ensure universal acceptance and prevent any religious interpretation of the symbols. Imagine the design meetings for that. So, more shapes. Anyone got a good hexagon? This concept of flags reaching beyond national borders also takes center stage in the realm of sports, most famously with the Olympic flag. 5 interlocking rings in blue, yellow, black, green, and red on a white field. Each color, along with the white background, represents at least one color found in the flag of every nation in the world at the time of its creation in 1913. This simple, elegant design wasn't just pretty. It was a powerful statement of unity through athletic competition. It proclaims that despite national differences, and even intense sporting rivalries, we can still gather, compete, and celebrate under a single, unifying banner. It's a vision of peace and understanding that, admittedly, occasionally gets drowned out by a rogue vuvuzela or a particularly controversial referee decision. But the intent is there. These flags, whether they represent the lofty goals of the UN, the life-saving neutrality of the Red Cross, or the unifying spirit of the Olympics, share a secret meaning. They are declarations of hope. They are fabric manifestations of our collective desire for something larger than ourselves, something that transcends the squabbles and divisions that so often define us. Historians still argue whether these symbols of global unity genuinely foster deeper cooperation, or merely serve as aspirational window dressing for continued national self-interest? It's a fair question, isn't it? Does flying the blue flag of the UN actually make nations play nicer, or does it just look good on the news? Yet, when you see a disaster relief team wearing the armbands of a humanitarian organization, unfurling their flag in a ravaged landscape, or when athletes from every nation march together behind the Olympic rings, you feel a flicker of something profound. It's the visual echo of ancient human yearning for belonging, extended now to a global scale. Remember those very first symbolic markers, the crude etchings on a cave wall, identifying one tribe from another. These flags are, in a way, the grown-up version of that impulse, attempting to create an identity that encompasses all tribes. They are a testament to the persistent, sometimes naive human belief that we can, in fact, get along, or at least play a friendly game of soccer without someone declaring war. These are the flags that whisper not of power or victory or even identity in the traditional sense, but of an ideal, a dream woven into cloth, inviting you to join. Imagine drifting now, not on a vast ocean, but in the silent, star-dusted velvet of the cosmos. You're gazing back at our pale blue dot, a swirl of cloud and ocean, and you ponder how those vibrant cloth rectangles you've come to know so well might fare beyond the gentle embrace of Earth's atmosphere. What happens when the wind, that ancient choreographer of fabric, abandons the stage entirely? What happens when our symbols, born of earthly needs and terrestrial struggles, are thrust into a vacuum so profound it could swallow a black hole's ego whole? You picture a flag, not rippling but rigidly outstretched, perhaps on the surface of a desolate, ochre-hued world, or suspended in the inky blackness between stars. It's a strange image, isn't it? Our flags, these fluttering declarations of who we are, fundamentally rely on a planet with an atmosphere, a breeze, a medium to dance upon. Yet, humanity, being humanity, has already planted its colors where no wind dares to whisper. You recall that iconic image, seared into the collective consciousness. Buzz Aldrin saluting the American flag on the moon in 1969. That flag, a mainstream historical fact if ever there was one, wasn't just draped on a pole. Oh no. It was mounted on a special telescoping pole with a horizontal bar extending from its top, giving it the illusion of fluttering in a breeze that simply wasn't there. A clever trick, a piece of theatrical stagecraft to satisfy our terrestrial expectations of what a flag should do. Without that bar, it would have hung limp, a sad, lifeless piece of cloth, an anachronism in the ultimate vacuum. It's a poignant reminder that even when we step onto another world, we carry our cultural baggage, our visual shorthand, right along with us. We still need our symbols to look like our symbols, even if reality dictates otherwise. But consider the practicalities, the indignities that flags suffered. Exposed to unfiltered solar radiation, extreme temperature swings from blistering sunlight to absolute frigid shadow, and the constant bombardment of micrometeorites. That flag, and the others planted on subsequent Apollo missions, likely didn't last very long. Its colors would have faded to a ghostly whisper, the fabric embrittled and torn by the harsh cosmic elements. In fact, most experts agree that by now, those flags are probably bleached white, perhaps even disintegrated into a fine lunar dust. You probably won't survive a trip to the moon without significant, life-sustaining technology, let alone your flag surviving for more than a few decades up there. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? Even our most triumphant symbols eventually succumb to the sheer indifference of the universe. As humanity looks further out, to Mars, to the moons of Jupiter, to asteroids, the question of flags becomes more complex. Do we plant a national flag on Mars? If so, which nations? Or do we need a new kind of flag entirely? One that represents all of humanity, or perhaps specific missions, or even future off-world colonies. Imagine, if you will, the flag of Mars Colony Alpha, a vibrant banner depicting a stylized red planet against a black background, perhaps with a single green sprout signifying the terraforming efforts that, let's be honest, will take a few millennia and probably won't happen in your lifetime. And what about property rights in space? The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 states that no nation can claim sovereignty over any celestial body. So, if you plant your national flag on an asteroid, are you claiming it? Or are you just saying, hey, we were here, and we brought a really nice piece of fabric? Historians still argue whether the act of planting a flag, in the absence of military occupation or established settlement, constitutes a legitimate claim to territory, especially in the context of international law as it applies to extraterrestrial bodies. It's a cosmic headache for lawyers, isn't it? A whole new branch of vexillology waiting to be born, astrovexillology, perhaps. You can almost hear the dusty debates in future lunar parliament halls. Consider the fringe tidbit of private space enterprises. Companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic are pushing the boundaries of space travel. Do they have flags? Absolutely. They have logos, mission patches, and often create banners to commemorate successful launches or milestones. These aren't national flags, but corporate ones, representing their commercial ventures and technological prowess. You might see a sleek, minimalist flag of a company that promises suborbital tourism. Perhaps a single stylized rocket plume on a field of deep space blue. It's a declaration of ambition, a signal to investors and competitors alike, far more than it is a symbol of a people or a nation in the traditional sense. It's capitalism, baby, reaching for the stars, and it needs its own branding, even in the void. The very nature of flags might have to evolve in space. Without an atmosphere to give them movement, perhaps future space flags will be projected onto surfaces, or embedded with glowing fibers that pulse with data, or even be made of advanced materials that react to solar flares, briefly illuminating messages in the cosmic dark. Maybe the ultimate space flag isn't a piece of fabric at all, but a massive laser projection onto the surface of a distant moon, visible for light years. A cosmic billboard, perhaps, though you'd hope for something a little more elegant than, "Welcome to Alpha Centauri, home of the best alien burgers." And what about flags for extraterrestrial life, should we ever encounter it? Would they even understand our concept of a flag? Would their symbols be olfactory, or based on changes in light spectrum, or perhaps, for truly advanced beings, a complex, multi-dimensional thought pattern projected directly into your consciousness? That's a bit beyond a simple piece of cloth, isn't it? Imagine trying to explain the symbolism of a national flag to a sentient gas cloud. Yes, it represents our glorious history, our struggles, our unity. And it's made of cotton, which is a plant we grow on our planet. You can practically feel the collective shrug of the galaxy. The future of flags, then, isn't just about where we plant them, but how they adapt to environments utterly alien to their origin. It's about whether a symbol designed for a specific set of physical laws, gravity, wind, light, can transcend those limitations and still communicate its meaning. When humanity becomes a multiplanetary species, will we still cling to the flags of our terrestrial nations, or will new identities emerge, demanding new banners? Perhaps a flag for Terran refugees reaching a new star system, or the Asteroid Miners Guild, a gritty, practical emblem of survival and industry among the rocks. You close your eyes, picturing these theoretical future flags. They are not merely pieces of cloth, but resilient whispers of human ambition, flung into the terrifying, exhilarating expanse. They speak of our enduring need to mark our presence, to declare our allegiances, and to signal our hopes, even when the only wind is the solar wind, and the only ground is dust from a cosmic forge. The fabric of our future, it seems, will be woven not just from threads of cotton or silk, but from the very stuff of dreams and distant stars. You find yourself, perhaps, in your own backyard, or maybe within the cozy confines of a particularly well-fortified blanket fort, surrounded by your most cherished possessions. You might even be picturing that corner of the internet you call home, where your avatar reigns supreme and your private messages hold court. In these intimately scaled worlds, the grand pronouncements of nation-states and ancient empires suddenly feel distant, don't they? But the impulse, the fundamental human need to declare, "This is mine, this is us," remains just as potent. And what better way to stake that claim, to etch your unique existence onto the very fabric of reality, than with a flag? Imagine, for a moment, that you decide to create a flag for your personal space, your sanctum sanctorum. What would it look like? Would it be a vibrant burst of your favorite color, perhaps with a meticulously drawn symbol representing your deepest passion? A tiny, stylized coffee cup if you're a caffeine connoisseur, or a pixelated sword if your digital adventures dominate your waking hours. This isn't just a quirky thought experiment. This is the very essence of personalized penance, the crafting of a visual manifesto for your individual self, or for the miniature cosmos of your micro-community. Think about the sheer, unadulterated joy of designing something that is uniquely yours. Not just a name tag, not just a badge, but a piece of cloth, swaying gently in whatever breeze exists in your little corner of the world, proclaiming your presence without a single uttered word. You might see a child's handwritten banner taped above a treehouse entrance, proclaiming "No grown-ups allowed," unless they bring snacks. That's a flag. Or perhaps a meticulously embroidered standard for a backyard wizarding club, complete with a secret handshake and an oath to protect the garden gnomes. That, too, is a flag, brimming with purpose and meaning for its tiny, dedicated fellowship. These are not the grand, history-altering banners we've discussed before, unfurled over battlefields or hoisted on mighty ships. No, these are the quiet declarations, the intimate whispers of identity. You see them in the DIY ethos of a local neighborhood watch, their hastily painted sign declaring, "Crime doesn't pay here, but we do have good potlucks." Or in the intricate, often humorous, insignias created by online gaming guilds, their digital banners flying proudly over virtual castles and raid boss encounters. They're a testament to the fact that the drive to belong, to differentiate, to signify, is woven into the very DNA of human interaction, no matter the scale. Sometimes, these micro-flags are born out of pure shared experience. Consider the informal, almost spontaneous. Flags that emerge at music festivals, a uniquely decorated pole marking your camp, often topped with something absurd like a rubber chicken or a sequined disco ball. It's not just about finding your tent after a long night. It's about a visual shorthand, a beacon that says, "Here are our people. Here is our temporary tribe." These are flags of transient community, born of shared laughter and collective memories, and they serve their purpose beautifully until the last chord fades and the fields clear. You see similar personalized pennants at family reunions. where a specially designed t-shirt or a crudely drawn family crest on a beach umbrella acts as a portable, temporary banner of belonging. It's a subtle nod to our ancient past, isn't it? A callback to when early humans first used simple markers to differentiate their tribes' hunting grounds from another's, or to distinguish their clan's shaman from the next villages. The tools have changed, the scale has shrunk, but the fundamental why remains the same. A mainstream historical fact that underscores this personal impulse for flags is the development of heraldry, which we touched upon briefly before. While it evolved into complex systems of aristocratic lineage and national symbols, its very origins were quite personal. Knights, for instance, needed easily identifiable symbols on their shields and surcoats to distinguish themselves in the chaos of battle. These personal devices, often unique to an individual or their immediate family, were essentially the earliest personalized pennants for people who, let's be honest, probably wouldn't have survived many battles without a clear way to tell friend from foe. As weaponry and armor became more uniform, distinguishing oneself became a matter of life and death, leading to an explosion of unique, personal identifiers, often translated onto small banners or gonfalons carried into conflict. And for a quirky or fringe tidbit, did you know about house flags on the internet? No, not literally, but the practice of online content creators, particularly on platforms like Twitch or YouTube, designing specific, often very elaborate visual identities for their fan bases. These aren't just logos. They often incorporate elements that feel very much like miniature flags for their community, complete with inside jokes, custom emotes, and specific color palettes. These digital pennants foster a sense of belonging among thousands, sometimes millions, of geographically dispersed individuals, transforming a simple online stream into a virtual gathering place with its own distinct visual culture. It's a modern iteration of our primal need to rally under a shared emblem, only instead of a physical banner, it's a pixelated one. Of course, not every attempt at personal flag design is a resounding success. Some end up looking like a toddler's fever dream, while others are so generic they could be for anyone, anywhere. And then there are those designs that are so intensely specific, so deeply personal, that anyone outside the inner circle would be utterly baffled by their meaning. Historians still argue whether the most effective flags, whether national or personal, arise from deliberate, committee-driven design, or from a more organic, almost accidental evolution, where a simple, resonant symbol somehow just sticks with the people it represents. Is it the designer's intent, or the community's embrace, that truly imbues a flag with its power? It's a debate that echoes in every local bake sale banner and every meticulously crafted family reunion flag. The charm of these personalized pennants, these flags of the micro-scale, lies in their intimacy. They don't demand your allegiance or represent centuries of shared sacrifice. Instead, they offer an invitation, a gentle suggestion of shared interests, a quiet declaration of unique existence. They might mark the boundaries of your personal space. Say, a do not disturb, genius at work flag above your desk, or signal your membership in a ridiculously niche hobby group like, the International Society of Spoon Collectors, whose flag might feature a very elegant, silver-plated spork. Yes, I'm sure such a society exists, and if it doesn't, someone probably needs to start one, complete with its own bespoke flag. They're often fleeting, sometimes silly, but always profoundly human. They remind us that the urge to mark our territory, to declare we are here, and this is what we're about. is as ancient and enduring as any grand empire's ensign. And in a world that often feels overwhelmingly vast, finding that tiny, personalized patch of cloth, or even just conceiving of it, can be a surprisingly comforting thought. You know, when you think about those personalized pennants, those tiny declarations of self that you might hang in your dorm room or wave at a particularly niche convention, you're observing evolution on a micro scale. But now let's zoom out. Way, way out. Picture a grand, shimmering tapestry woven from light itself, stretching across millennia. On this tapestry, every thread is a flag, and you're watching them shift, bleed, and reform in real time, like a slow-motion, psychedelic animation of history. One moment, a fearsome dragon unfurls against a field of midnight blue. The next, it's a stylized gear, then a pixelated emoji. You see symbols merge, colors lighten or deepen, entire designs dissolving into abstraction only to coalesce into something entirely new. It's a dizzying dance, a constant discarding and adopting of visual identity. And here's your cheeky reality check for the evening. If you ever find yourself designing a flag that you believe will be timeless, just remember that the only truly constant thing in vexillology, like in life, is change. Your magnum opus might be a meme in 3 centuries, if the world even has flags then. You probably won't survive long enough to see it become obsolete, which, you know, silver lining. From those whispers of ancient cloth we first explored, those rudimentary markers of identity, flags began their long, slow metamorphosis. Initially, they were often practical extensions of existing symbols. A clan's totemic animal painted on a hide, or a chieftain's personal standard, perhaps just a decorated pole, remember. As societies grew more complex, so too did their visual language. The simple animal silhouette might evolve into an intricately stylized beast, then into a full heraldic device, complete with shields, crowns, and Latin mottos. Think of the shift from a warrior carrying a simple eagle effigy into battle to a medieval knight's banner bristling with quartered arms and elaborate crests. This wasn't just about fanciness. It was about layering identity. Each new element, each new color told a story, a marriage, a conquest, a claim to lineage. The flag became a genealogical chart in fabric. Consider the astonishing transformation during periods of seismic societal upheaval. Take the French Revolution, for example, a period of utter chaos and radical reinvention. Before the revolution, the banner of royal France was typically a rich blue field adorned with the golden fleur-de-lis, a symbol deeply ingrained with centuries of monarchy and divine right. When the Bastille fell and the old order crumbled, that flag simply couldn't represent the new revolutionary spirit. It was, quite literally, torn down. In its place emerged the iconic tricolor, blue and red, representing the city of Paris, flanking the white, which traditionally symbolized the Bourbon monarchy, but now reimagined as the unifying color of the nation. It was a conscious, deliberate act of visual rebranding, stripping away the ornate past and embracing a simpler, more egalitarian future. Historians still debate whether the apparent simplification of flag designs during the Age of Revolutions was primarily an aesthetic choice driven by Enlightenment ideals of clarity, or a pragmatic response to the need for easily reproducible symbols in an era of mass citizen armies. Either way, the message was clear. Out with the old, in with the powerfully simple. As empires rose and fell, as colonies gained independence, you see this pattern repeat. New nations often deliberately distanced themselves from their former colonial masters through their flag designs. Sometimes this meant incorporating indigenous symbols or colors. Other times it involved a complete rejection of European heraldry in favor of geometric patterns or abstract concepts. Take a look at the flags that emerged from the decolonization of Africa in the mid-20th century. Many embraced Pan-African colors: red, gold, green, black, each holding a new, hopeful meaning. The blood of liberation, the wealth of the continent, the lush lands, and the proud people. These were not mere aesthetic choices. They were declarations of sovereignty, woven into the very fabric. Then you have those peculiar, almost baffling historical tidbits that defy easy categorization. For instance, the flag of the ancient kingdom of Benin, located in what is now modern-day Nigeria, was reported by European visitors to depict a man wielding a sword, seemingly in the act of beheading another man. Now imagine that flying over a modern embassy. It's a stark, brutal image that stands in fascinating contrast to the often idealized or abstract symbols we associate with national flags today. It speaks volumes about the different cultural values and power dynamics of that era, reminding us that what we consider an appropriate national emblem has itself evolved dramatically. No smiling doves or olive branches there, just a blunt, unmistakable declaration. You don't often see heads on pikes on contemporary flags, unless it's for a very specific and probably short-lived protest movement. Even now, flags continue their quiet evolution. Think of the rise of digital flags, those animated GIFs and emojis that flicker across your screens, conveying complex ideas with just a few pixels. Or consider the flags of international organizations, which often strive for universal symbols, globes, olive branches, abstract shapes, to transcend national specificities. These aren't just pretty pictures. They are the ongoing visual diary of humanity, each thread a testament to a changing world, a shift in power, a new dream, or an old memory refusing to fade. Every crease, every fade, every brilliant hue tells a story, and you, my friend, are witnessing its grand, unending transformation. You're standing there, aren't you? The wind whips around you, not a gentle breeze, but a determined gust, as a flag unfurls above. Maybe it's snapping crisply against a brilliant blue sky, its colors vivid and sharp. Or perhaps it hangs heavy, drenched and drooping under a relentless rain, the fabric clinging to the pole like a shroud. You feel it, don't you? That inexplicable tug, that strange resonance in your chest, a ripple that starts deep within and spreads outwards. It's not just cloth, is it? It's a focal point for something far more primal, far more profound. And here's a little reality check for your cozy bedtime story. If you stood in front of the wrong flag at the wrong time in the wrong place, you probably wouldn't survive this feeling. Just a thought to chew on. But right now, let's talk about the why. Why does a piece of dyed fabric, cut into a specific shape, hold such an incredible power over us? Why does it transform from a simple textile into a conduit for the very essence of human emotion? You see it in the way shoulders straighten, in the collective intake of breath when a national anthem begins and that flag ascends. It's pride, isn't it? A swelling, almost physical sensation that binds you to an invisible thread of shared history, common purpose, and collective triumph. Think of a triumphant athletic victory when a flag is draped around a victor's shoulders. It's not just a blanket. It's the woven embodiment of years of grueling effort, the echoing cheers of a nation, the validation of 1,000,000 small sacrifices. It's a warm hug from an entire population, compressed into a couple of square meters of fabric. Though let's be honest, Getting an actual hug from an entire population would be incredibly awkward and probably involve far too many elbows. Then, there's the flip side, the heavy, gut-wrenching ache. The same fabric that can fill you with soaring elation can just as swiftly plunge you into the depths of sorrow. You watch as a flag is slowly, deliberately lowered to half-mast, or worse, folded into a precise triangle, handed to a weeping family member. It's no longer a symbol of strength, but of immense, unbearable loss. It cradles the memory of those who are gone, their sacrifices, their unfulfilled dreams. Every ripple in its descent is a tear shed, every crisp fold a silent, collective gasp of grief. This isn't just about a simple lowering. It's a national eulogy, a silent symphony of despair played out in fabric and air. Historians still argue whether the practice of half-masting flags emerged from a medieval superstition about allowing room for the invisible flag of death above the living, or if it was simply a practical visual signal of mourning. Either way it works, doesn't it? And for some, that same piece of cloth isn't about pride or sorrow, but about a fiery, unyielding defiance. You remember those rough, improvised banners we talked about, back when people first slapped symbols onto a stick? Well, that primal urge to assert oneself, to stand against an oppressive tide, hasn't changed much. When you see a flag, perhaps a tattered, homemade one, being waved furiously in a protest, or hoisted by a revolutionary group, it's not just a flag anymore. It's a scream, a declaration, a refusal to be silenced. It's a bold, "not on my watch," stitched from the very fiber of rebellion. Think of the Irish tricolour, initially a symbol of reconciliation, but so often brandished as a potent emblem of resistance against British rule. Or the simple white flag, ironically, often a symbol of surrender, but in some contexts of the ultimate defiance of refusing to fight further. It's almost like a flag can have an identity crisis depending on who's holding it. A bit like that one friend who's a librarian by day and a competitive eater by night. The reason these emotions hit so hard, you see, is because flags aren't just decorative items. They are, in essence, projected selves. They are us. We imbue them with our collective hopes, our shared fears, our deepest convictions. They become canvases for our identity, mirrors reflecting our triumphs and tragedies. When a flag is disrespected, it feels like a personal affront because it is personal. It's an attack on a shared identity you've invested in. Conversely, when it's honored, it's as if you are being honored, your place in that collective story affirmed. It's the closest thing we have to a tangible, universally recognized avatar for an entire people, a single point of emotional convergence. Remember that specific quirk of ancient human psychology, where they'd project human qualities onto inanimate objects, like that particularly grumpy-looking rock. Well, we still do it, just with slightly more elegant cloth. The very threads are saturated with the weight of generations, the triumphs of distant ancestors, the tears of forgotten losses, and the burning aspirations of those yet to come. It's a heavy burden for a piece of fabric, wouldn't you say? Almost makes you want to give it a little nap, like a tired toddler. Living tapestries of time. Recognize flags not just as cloth, but as condensed narratives of history, memory, and aspiration. You settle deeper into your pillow, the soft hum of the night a gentle lullaby. And as your mind drifts, you begin to see flags not merely as fabric, but as vibrant, living tapestries woven from the very threads of time itself. Imagine standing before one, perhaps a tattered, ancient standard in a dimly lit museum hall, and feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on you. It's more than just faded dyes and fraying edges. It's a silent historian, whispering tales of forgotten battles, triumphant declarations, and the quiet resilience of generations past. You touch the invisible stories within its folds, and frankly, you probably won't survive the sheer volume of history it's about to dump into your subconscious. Good luck with that. Each color, each symbol is a carefully chosen word in a silent language, a word that carries the weight of collective memory. Take the stars and stripes, for instance. It isn't just red, white, and blue. It's the defiant stand at Lexington and Concord, the arduous winter at Valley Forge, the industrial might of a burgeoning nation, and the bittersweet sacrifice of countless lives in conflicts far from home. When you gaze upon it, you're not just seeing 50 stars and 13 stripes. You're witnessing the condensed saga of a republic's birth, its struggles, and its evolving ideals. It's a mainstream historical fact that the design of the American flag, particularly the addition of stars, has consistently reflected the expansion of the Union. Each new star a fresh narrative added to the grand tapestry, transforming it from a symbol of 13 disparate colonies into the emblem of a sprawling continental power. It's a living document, constantly updated, much like your phone's operating system, but with significantly more gravitas and far fewer annoying pop-ups asking you to rate your experience. And what about aspiration? Flags are not just mirrors reflecting what was. They are profound windows gazing into what could be. Think of the rainbow flag, for instance. Its very existence is an act of hopeful declaration, a vibrant assertion of identity and a plea for acceptance, born from struggle but pointing resolutely towards a future of equality and understanding. Or consider the flags adopted by newly independent nations, often bursting with fresh colors and optimistic symbols, eager to declare their unique vision to the world after shaking off the dust of colonial rule. These banners aren't merely announcing their sovereignty. They're projecting their collective dreams onto the global stage, whispering promises of a brighter tomorrow. It's like saying, "Hey world, we're here, and we brought our own snacks and a really ambitious PowerPoint presentation about our future, complete with dazzling animations." The memory held within these cloth narratives isn't always triumphal, mind you. Sometimes, a flag carries the scars of profound sorrow, or even complicity in historical wrongs. The very act of unfurling it can stir deep-seated emotions, from immense pride to searing shame, depending on whose memories are being invoked. A tattered battle flag might conjure images of heroic sacrifice and unwavering courage for some, while for others, it might represent a lost cause, a symbol of oppression or division, a painful reminder of injustices. This dual nature is part of their undeniable power, for even in their ability to cleave sentiment, they speak volumes about the unresolved narratives within a society, urging us to confront difficult truths. There's a quirky tidbit about flags and memory that underscores their deeply personal significance. During the American Civil War, it wasn't uncommon for soldiers on both sides to use pieces of their tattered regimental flags as deeply cherished personal mementos, tucking these fragments into their Bibles, sewn into their uniforms, or enclosed in letters home to loved ones. These tiny slivers of cloth, often no bigger than a thumbnail, carried the entire weighty essence of their unit's identity. Its shared battles, its profound losses, and its collective purpose, serving as tangible anchors to a collective memory that was both glorious and terrifying. Imagine carrying a threadbare piece of fabric that represented every grueling march through mud, every whispered conversation in the makeshift trenches, every moment of sheer terror and exhilarating courage under fire. It definitely puts your keychain full of souvenir bottle openers to shame, doesn't it? Perhaps we should all start carrying around a little swatch of our personal history. The true magic of flags, perhaps, lies in this. They distill millennia of complex human experience into a manageable, reproducible form. They are mnemonic devices on a grand scale, helping entire populations remember where they came from, what they believe in, and what they're striving for. A single glance at a national flag can trigger a cascade of historical associations, a rush of shared emotion, a powerful reaffirmation of identity. It's an incredibly efficient form of cultural shorthand, a visual language understood across generations without the need for dense textbooks or lengthy explanations. You don't need a 500-page historical treatise to understand what the simple red disc on a white field of the Japanese flag means to its people. It instantly evokes the rising sun, the purity of the land, and a profound sense of national renewal and unwavering spirit. Historians still argue whether the concept of a truly national flag truly solidified with the dramatic rise of nation-states in the late 18th century, a period of sweeping political upheaval, or if its roots stretch much further back into the pre-modern period, evolving slowly and organically from diverse tribal banners, feudal ensigns, and royal standards. Was the proliferation of national flags a top-down decree, mandated by emerging governments seeking to unify disparate populations, or a more grassroots, organic emergence of collective identity, a spontaneous expression from the people themselves? The debate highlights just how deeply intertwined the physical symbol is with the abstract concept of nationhood itself, questioning whether the flag was merely a reflection of a nascent national identity, or an active, powerful agent in shaping that very consciousness, helping to forge disparate groups into a cohesive whole. You close your eyes and picture them now, not as static objects hanging limply from a pole, but as living, breathing narratives, constantly absorbing new layers of meaning and significance with every passing moment. A child saluting a flag on parade day adds their fresh, innocent aspiration to its ancient weave. A veteran's tearful, knowing gaze imbues it with the heavy weight of sacrifice and duty. A protester waving a flag in defiance transforms it into a dynamic canvas for urgent social or political change, a rallying cry against injustice. They are truly living tapestries of time, perpetually spun and respun with the vibrant, ever-evolving threads of history, memory, and aspiration. And sometimes, after all that living and evolving, they really do just need a good wash. All that history and emotion can get a bit grimy, perhaps a gentle cycle with a mild detergent. You stand before a vast, invisible tapestry, threads of scarlet and gold, azure and verdant green, stretching out not across a loom, but through the very fabric of your mind. You don't see them consciously, not really. Instead, a ripple of feeling, a subtle tug, registers somewhere deep, a place where logic gives way to raw, unbidden emotion. It's like the ghost of a scent from a childhood memory, or a forgotten melody that suddenly transports you. This isn't just about recognizing a nation or a sports team anymore. This is about the unseen currents, the subliminal whispers that flags constantly transmit, shaping perceptions, evoking loyalties, or sparking ire without a single word being spoken. You might think you're just looking at a pretty pattern, a nice piece of cloth fluttering in the breeze, but your brain... Oh, your brain is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes, subtly, incessantly, and frankly, without your permission. It's a miracle we function at all, given how much unseen information we process. You probably won't survive this conversation without realizing just how much. Good luck with that. Consider for a moment how a flash of crimson, perhaps with a hammer and sickle, might trigger an immediate, visceral reaction in someone who lived through the Cold War. A cascade of fear or defiance, or perhaps even nostalgia, all before their conscious mind can even parse the historical context. Or how the sight of a familiar striped banner, the one you pledge allegiance to, can swell your chest with a pride you didn't know was waiting there, or a sorrow that catches in your throat, a lump of collective memory. This isn't a rational process. It's an instinctual, almost primal recognition. Flags operate on that deeper level, the one beneath the chatter of daily life, burrowing into the subconscious like roots seeking water. They are the ultimate symbolic shorthand, bypassing the slow lane of language and heading straight for the limbic system, where feelings are born. One mainstream historical fact that highlights this subconscious power is the profound impact of the Nazi swastika flag. Far from being just a piece of fabric, it became so deeply imprinted as a symbol of terror and hatred that even decades after its fall, its mere display can incite immediate revulsion and condemnation across much of the world, triggering collective trauma and a firm moral imperative against its ideology. It's a testament to how profoundly a flag can embed itself in the global psyche, becoming synonymous with a horrific period of human history. Yet, on the quirkier side, did you know some neuroscientists have explored how the human eye, particularly the fovea, is drawn to high-contrast edges and vibrant colors, precisely the kind of visual cues common in flag design? It's speculated that our ancient ancestors, needing to quickly identify friend or foe, or a valuable resource, evolved to rapidly process such visual information, making us inherently susceptible to the immediate grab of a flag. So, in a way, we're hardwired to be flag spotters, even if we're just trying to enjoy our latte. This deep-seated response is why, even in our hyper-connected digital age, flags haven't become obsolete. In fact, they seem to be everywhere, perhaps more so than ever. From emojis to digital avatars to protest signs to the actual physical flags flying over public buildings or sports stadiums, their power endures. They simplify complex ideas into digestible emotional units. That complicated political theory or a nation's entire tumultuous history, shrunk down, compressed, and presented as a colorful rectangle. It's the ultimate Cliff's Notes version of identity, wouldn't you agree? And like any good summary, it leaves out a lot, but hits the emotional high points. Historians still argue whether flags primarily reflect existing national sentiments or actively create them, shaping a collective identity that might not have coalesced otherwise. It's the chicken and egg of vexillology. Does the flag rise from the people, or do the people rise to the flag? We talked about how flags embody dignity and discipline, but also how they weave protest into the air. We saw how they've transformed over centuries, from personal pennants to global emblems. All of these layers, all these stories, are compressed into that simple, waving cloth. It's not just a collection of fibers. It's a living tapestry of memory and aspiration. When you see a flag, you're not just seeing fabric. You're seeing the echoes of every hand that raised it, every eye that saluted it, every tear that fell for it. You're seeing triumph and tragedy, unity and division, all wrapped up in a visual shorthand your subconscious drinks in without a single conscious thought. So, as the day drifts into night, and the world outside softens at its edges, take a moment to reflect on these unseen threads. You've journeyed through the banners of battlefields, the silken signals of the sea, the revolutionary colors, and the secret geometry of symbols. You've peered into the fabric of emotion and understood why a simple piece of cloth can stir such profound feelings. Now, as the light fades and the sounds of the day grow distant, imagine those flags, not as static symbols, but as gentle, almost breathing entities. They sway with the imperceptible currents of memory, each fold a whispered story, each color a muted echo of human experience. Feel the quiet settle around you, a soft blanket of calm. The grand narratives of history, the vibrant hues of conflict and triumph, they begin to recede, becoming fainter, like a distant lullaby. There's no urgency here, no need to decipher every thread or unravel every secret. Just the gentle presence of symbols, ancient and enduring, now resting peacefully in the vast expanse of your awareness. Let your thoughts drift, light as a feather on the softest breeze. The world of flags, with its complex language and its unspoken power, can now simply be. It is a part of the quiet understanding that settles over you, a gentle whisper of the collective human journey. All the colors, all the shapes, all the meaning, now blend into a harmonious, comforting blur, a silent symphony of symbols. Allow your mind to release its grasp on the day's journey, letting go of every thought, every image. Your mind is quiet, your body is at peace. Just the gentle rhythm of your breath guiding you deeper into stillness. Rest now, wrapped in the quietude of understanding. Sweet dreams.